It is First and Now, the official BC Lions podcast, and Nick, it is Matt with Nick as always. Recording this on a Wednesday afternoon, we can finally say it. Summer has arrived at BC Lions practice. We're out there. We're not really doing any physical activity, but we're sweating after today.
You got to wear your sunscreen.
Yeah. Oh,
I saw
definitely.
Steven putting it on today.
Had to put mine on as well before going out, and I know the weather been kind of hit or miss, but feels great.
Well, I feel like we were stuck in here's the weather talk off the bat always, but I feel like we were stuck in that 23, 24 range, and now we're hitting it this weekend. Looks awesome in Vancouver. Not so sadly, we're going to Hamilton where it looks like it's going to be hot too, so I'm not complaining either way.
Get some wind at Tim Hortons Field like
Naturally,
we normally will. Coming off the escarpment there. Is that what they call the hill there? That's where the wind comes off. Of course.
Steel mills blowing all that wind in.
Yeah. Always, we're going to talk about Hamilton a lot here. Steve Milton from Ticats.ca, Ticats Audio Network, of course, longtime columnist before that with the Hamilton Spectator. But Steve's going to give us a deep dive on this Tiger Cat team that is 0-4, but like the last couple of Lions opponents, not losing games by much necessarily. Bo Levi Mitchell's looking like Bo Levi Mitchell. We'll talk to Steve. But yeah, I always love going to Tim Hortons Field. Just something about it. It's a pure football environment in Steeltown.
Yeah, I call it Dane Evans' house. He clarified that last year, and that's what I refer to going forward, at least until further notice.
One of the more fun victories we had last season,
easily,
was Game 17, locking up a home playoff game. Sean White walking them off. Yes, of course. After Dane came in for Vernon Adams and engineered that game-winning drive. Perfect script writing the football gods had that night. But we're going to talk about Hamilton shortly, as mentioned. Have to touch on it. It's in kind of a funny time capsule right now. We're recording this on the Wednesday, first full day of practice in the books, but almost a full week since the Lions took down Edmonton 24-21. Of course, there were some elements to that game we like, some still need working on, but David Mackey, the winning score, or not the winning score, but a go-ahead score in the fourth quarter, avenging his earlier fumble. So getting Mackey involved in short yardage, that was a fun win.
Yeah, and something that was kind of an unexpected wrinkle. I know we didn't even go out for practice last week, at least myself, so I never saw that coming, and it was nice to see. David's someone who's in the past years, when he's got the ball in his hands, he's pretty electric, right? I know we put out a little extra video where his 4 hurdles in his career, and he's someone that's not afraid to do it. Also hurdled the defender last Thursday, but yeah, the redemption factor, right? In his post-game media, he was reassured that, even after that fumble where he blames it on himself, obviously not with the ball security and all that, but the team didn't go away from him in the short yardage and gets that redemption with that fourth quarter touchdown. And I think an important factor that a lot of fans have definitely been in our mentions about, it takes some hits off Vernon Adams Jr. too, right? And VA was VA in that win too. No abdominal strain holding him back. 330 passing yards. I think 33 more on the ground too. So that's a standard we've come to expect from VA.
6 carries for 33. Yeah,
he's at his elite level here.
And he earned his Player of the Month and Player of the Week honors all in 1 week here. So VA's on pace for over 6,000, and there's some great media content, media scrum with Vernon and Coach Rick, but Vernon talking about how it was Jay Janauer at Global who asked him about being on pace for 6,000, and the answer, I'm paraphrasing, you love to hear it, is if it helps us get wins, win more West games, then that's all I care about, and that's the sign of a true leader. So 4 games in 18 days to start, 3-1 record, 3-0 in the division, Nick. That, to me, is the important factor. We will not have a divisional game until 1 week from now when Saskatchewan comes in for the Watermelon Smash. But say what you want about the Elks and how maybe they deserve a better fate being 0-4, but the Lions made enough plays to win that game, and for yet another week they get the ball last. It pays dividends.
Yeah, and I think it's one of maybe the number one stories right now, as you mentioned it with these 0-4 teams. There's 3 of them, right? In Hamilton, Edmonton, and Winnipeg, is that they've all been in these close games and they haven't been able to pull out a single win, whereas we've been in a couple of close games down the wire, and to get those victories, you see it. We see it every day. We've seen it for the past couple of years. When you talk about the culture here, the right people, Coach Campbell emphasizes that day in and day out, that we have the right people, not only just the talented people here to get these wins, but in the crunch time moments, it comes through handy, right? We're obviously alluding to Sean White hitting that game winner, and he's one of the guys that is so well liked in the locker room, such a team guy, but it also helps that he's arguably the best at his position right now and one of the best of all time, right? And just that automatic guarantee that once Vernon and Aiden Eberhardt and Will Stanback push this team into field goal range for Sean to trot on the field and hit that game winner, I'm not even thinking he's going to miss. It got to that point, and I was thinking about it over the weekend as one of the maybe common takeaways is we're just taking this we can't take this for granted. The Sean, Vernon, Holland's leading the league in yards. We got to live in the moment. It's early, but at the same time,
leading the whole league in rushing yards too, right?
Yeah, quietly. Actually, Kadeem Carey has him by 1 yard sadly right now, but that happened on over the weekend. But you can't take this for granted, and that's why we're 3-1.
Yeah, comes at a cost. Unfortunately, Josh Woods lost for the season with the knee injury. Just devastating. Yeah. I know you, with your wide lens there, you were filming it, and you thought it looked pretty bad from the get-go. You could just feel the energy starting to sap out there. Took him a while to get taken off, carted off, and the linebacker depth has been great. It's going to get tested here. We think Ben Hladek. I think was it Ben Hladek working in the middle today.
They moved Ben to the middle. Yep.
So Ben and Bo starting, and expect a guy like Ryder Varga to play a bigger role. Isaiah Messam been a mainstay on special teams. Everyone is going to have to step up, but we wish Josh a speedy recovery and look forward to chronicling his return starting in camp next year.
Yeah, it's just such a shame, right? I know we had Josh on our On Tap show the other week, and I brought up the point to Josh that in the offseason going into this 2024 season, we were talking that we had to make Josh Woods a prominent marketing point for one of our players, right? He's poised right after that playoff surge that he had to be one of the star players in this league, and I think he was showing that through 3 games there, 4 or 3 and a bit games there with 21 tackles, moving into the middle in that defense, right? And it's such a shame. It's a second ACL injury too, unfortunately. But you can turn that into a positive. He injured his right knee back playing for UCLA in college, so he knows what to expect. He knows. Where I was actually talking to him today, one of the positives about this injury is that he knows when it's going to feel right. He's gone through this experience before. I mean, he's still in the prime of his career too. That's something that we can at least take the positive outlook for, is that he'll be back stronger than ever. Going to continue to be around this defense, right? He's not someone that's going to go home for the season. He's going to be here, coaching up the youngsters. AC Lee's another name that could get more reps, right? But that's, like you said, the depth of having Ben Hladek and Bo Levi being able to play Will, Mike, whatever, right? It sucks to lose Josh, but I think the linebacker group's still in good hands, and more Ryder Varga. We always talk about Ryder Varga being that stat sheet stuffer, and could see more of that down the road here.
Yeah, all the best to Josh. Saw he was already working out in the gym here today after practice. It's a long, slow process, but he'll come back even stronger. Off to Hamilton. We go Saturday, depart 4 o'clock Pacific, Sunday. 0-4 Tiger Cats, but we kind of hit on it at the top here. Tim Hortons Field, never an easy venue. Just the one win there last season. That was the first win the Lions had there since 2017. A couple of bad losses there in the meantime, and as Chris Slugger told us on BC Lions on Tap, subscribe to that podcast feed, Lions Audio Network, every Tuesday night, 10 o'clock on 980 CKNW. But Slugger was telling us that defensive line with the likes of David Menard, Nick Usher, Casey Sales, a solid veteran now, was solid with Winnipeg previously, just to name a few guys, they expect to have their hands full.
100%. I think Casey Sales might be one of the most underrated players in the CFL, right? Hamilton, I think they pay him like a superstar, and he definitely is like borderline superstar talent. He came from Winnipeg, right? One of those players that this discourse is going on about Winnipeg getting plucked from all their championship players. He's right up there for one of the most crucial guys they lost, right? And he's that force up the middle for Hamilton. But yeah, Nick Usher, he mentioned, I think he's quietly having a great season for them, and that's great for Nick. Obviously, he spent some time here last year, but 3 tackles for a loss already for him. Brandon Barlow is a key addition they made from Toronto, again plucking Toronto from their 16-2 team last year. They snagged him, and he has 3 sacks for them already. But it's also a defense Simone Lawrence is gone, Tunde Adeleke is gone, Ted Laurent's gone, Dylan Wynn's gone. So I think that it's not maybe too much of a surprise that this team is 0-4 when you lose. Like, that's 4 key veteran pieces, right? And so it may take an extra game or two to kind of find your rhythm on defense. There still is kind of superstar talent. I mean, they lost Jameer Thurman's another name they lost. So there's a lot of names they lost. So well, I can't take them lightly. They got some new pieces that look good. Katsantonis is there, obviously, right, as a star safety. So work's going to be cut out for the offense.
Yep, VA going to have to exploit the back end of that defense. It's on the offensive line to keep him upright. 3 wins, no sacks allowed, and look for that trend, that streak to continue. Happy to announce we were earlier today. Our next home game, as mentioned, the Watermelon Smash. Upper Bowl is open. We are expecting a massive crowd, a massive Week 6 game against the Rough Riders. Tickets starting at $25 for adults. Youth 17 and under get in for only $15. Rumors of yours truly, maybe the talks are preliminary, could be smashing some watermelons on TV next week.
On film?
Maybe.
Gonna get some documentation of that?
We don't want to reveal it all yet. You should come film it if we do it. It might be.
Well, if this is happening, do you have a strategy? Like, are you going like two-hand, like over the Donkey Kong kind of smash?
It was suggested to me by
a tool involved, or like what's going on?
It was suggested to me by the outlets we're doing a little bit of media with next week, and when it's official, we'll spill the beans. So.
That's awesome. I mean, I have no insider information yet, and I kind of don't want insider information for this, because last year it happened out of total randomness. We did not expect this. When I say we, our content team, and that was like David Menard and Thibaut Debaye walking in and their overalls carrying the watermelons.
Yeah, that's right.
That was hilarious.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we got more of that in stock. Obviously, remember last year with Lucky Whitehead smashing the watermelons. He actually did that.
Yeah.
In front of the dressing rooms at BC Place. But I'm sure we'll have some fun stuff in store. All the relays are back in the backyard bash outside with the Rough Riders fans and the Lions fans. That was a really cool visual last year, seeing all the,
it was great.
One side of orange and the one side of green. Kind of had that little bit of a Grey Cup feel to it, with like, when you go to Lions Den or any of the convention centers where it's all different kind of fans interacting. That's what it kind of felt like out there. It was a really cool experience, and should be duplicated next Saturday.
Yes, bclions.com. Get your tickets. Let's fill it up as much as we can. When you're announcing the Upper Bowl's open 10, 11 days out, you know a big crowd is on hand. The BC Lions Backyard Bash underway at 11 o'clock. We talked about it. Watermelon eating contests, other fun competitions with Lions and Riders fans.
Margaritas.
Yes,
everything.
$5 drinks, Molson Coors, food and soft drinks for kids and fans of all ages, games for the kids. And if the weather's like it has been the last couple days, it should be even more outstanding. All right, Steve Milton from Ticats.ca, Ticats Audio Network. He's going to stop by, do a deep dive on this 0-4 Hamilton team. Talk about Bo Levi Mitchell, I'm sure, among other key elements to this team. We head to Steeltown coming up on First and Now. And it is now our great pleasure to welcome a voice and a face that is no stranger to CFL coverage and media, particularly in Steeltown. Longtime writer, columnist with the Hamilton Spectator, and now he is with Ticats.ca, Ticats Audio Network, multi-platform columnist, Nick. It says so right in his bio.
You gotta believe it.
Yeah, it's on the internet. It must be true. Steve Milton with us here on First and Now. Steve, welcome aboard. Good to talk to you again.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Hi, Nick. How are you doing? Good to see you guys. Always enjoy talking life and football with you guys.
Yeah, it's last couple times we've gotten together. It's been at Grey Cups. You made an appearance there at the Lions Den, Hamilton Convention Center. It was late at night. Not sure how much of that weekend we remember, but we remember. We can talk about it anyway. Want to talk about the new venture for you? You're a few months into it now, 4 football weeks anyway. How have you enjoyed the transition from the newspaper to the team content world, other than the record, of course?
Right. Okay. So I'm going to start with something right there. They hate the word content, right?
Okay.
And you'll find that's not a criticism of you by any means, Matt. But
no,
but it's all people have spent years in sort of what we call legacy journalism, where I did spend close to half a century. Content sort of became identified with interchangeable with any kind of information. How to tie your shoe was content, that kind of thing, right? Or how to make a nice souffle, or those kinds of things. Where it's stuff that stuff to know, but it's not sort of news or no opinion or those kinds of things. So that's one of the reasons that it's called. We didn't call it content provider when the job was created here, and it's a multi-platform job, which is of course audio, visual, and print, all on the internet, of course, and on the site and various social things like that. I like it. I like it a lot. I like the immediacy of it. I was a big supporter of, unlike so many ancient journalists, of which I am one. I didn't really. I never fought against the internet. In fact, I wanted to move it forward. I remember working for the Sporting News, but I was the Canadian correspondent for the Sporting News while I was still at the Spec in the early 90s. And I came back and said, I don't even know what this thing is. It's called something, but they've got me working on it, and everybody's using it. Maybe we should be looking at it. And they did what I would have done if I owned a newspaper, and say, why would you want to do that? Why would we give away something that we now sell? But so I've never been against it. I really like it, and so I like the immediacy of it.
Yeah,
I really like that, and I like the fact that they're giving me a fairly free rein here. That was part of it. There isn't any public relations part to it, like so many people that make the transition that I have. So many of our friends that all three of us know. Some of their job description is public relations. I'll do what I can for the company, but it won't be in the. And I haven't worn a Ticat jersey since I got here, which doesn't mean that I don't wish them well. I do work there, but it's not that, because I think you've got to have some kind of objectivity. We're talking off air, sort of dominate this, the three of us, and saying that if you don't sometimes point out the warts, then they don't recognize people don't believe you when you say, boy, they got a nice complexion now, right? If you don't recognize the acne.
Yeah, if the team loses in convincing fashion, you're not going to be writing about how the punter had a good night, right?
What a nice arc he had on his punt.
Yeah,
and that's what happens when you have to search for, if they're being too. And so I really appreciate that here. They do that on the Ticats audio network. They've done a really nice job on that. They made that transition. It was very groundbreaking at the time when it came out. And for your listeners that don't know, the Ticats do the way you get the game is on your computer now, on the internet. There is still an element of over the air that they provide, but it's the Ticats announcers and all of those kinds of things, and that's to satisfy some of the people that just aren't computer savvy or don't want to be, and that's fine with me. But basically, that was the more radical move than doing something like hiring me and expanding the sort of notion of how they were going to actually cover things in the print and the podcast situation. We're moving it forward a little bit that way, bringing some of the elements of, I would like to think of, mainstream journalism to it, that the better elements.
And obviously, Steve, there's guys like Ed Tate, Rob Vanstone across the league, also on the trajectory that you're on right now. How exciting is that to see that it's not great. Just you, but across the league?
They're old friends, right? To start with, and the first guy I called was Eddie, and in fact, every time we've had a new beat writer, and that's how long I've been around as the columnist. Like, I've never been the beat writer at the Spectator. I was always the columnist, so I had probably 6 different beat writers, and every time a new one would come on, they'd say, well, got any advice? I said, and I just handed him a phone number, and it was Eddie Tate. Said, he's the guy you call. And I did the same thing when I got this job. Eddie, how do I navigate this? How are you able to now? In the last few years, Eddie hasn't had to write too many negative things. A team that goes to 4 straight Grey Cups, but he was very helpful that way, and he also does some of the soccer as well. And that is a team where he's had to be, he's had to do what I've had to do a bit with the Ticats. The Ticats are off to a tough start, and it's tough to be objective and not cruel, because the history. If you're a columnist, particularly, your most fun is when you can really run at a team, and it also could be a little bit cruel, a little bit personal. So I don't do any of that, but you can still get the idea across, and the good thing is that I happen to be dealing the two people you talk to, as you guys know, most often after the game, always the coach, always the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And before I even get questions out of my mouth, they start analyzing it themselves, and can be extremely harsh on themselves and on also what happened on the field. I don't mean harsh, honest, right? I almost never have to ask that question. Right? They'll volunteer, and part of it is just the positions that they're in, but part of it is the two types of men that they are. They both almost want to bear too much of the brunt, I think sometimes, but they do. I mean, that in this league, coaches and quarterbacks, right? That's what it is.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's not everything, but it's a big part of things. It's a coaches and quarterbacks league.
I think when you talk about bearing much of the brunt right now, it's Bo Levi Mitchell that maybe is taking a little too much flack for his play, right? Because I mean, it's an 0-4 team, but from afar, I think Bo is playing his best football in years. Are you seeing the same thing? Very
perceptive, Nick. Exactly, and we were just talking about this with somebody else. I was doing one of the local radio stations, and I think one of the things that happens is if they're 2-2, and they should be 2-2. I mean, there's 2 games. How did they lose them? It comes down to the last-minute field goals that shouldn't have even been in the picture. The fact that the other team had a chance to kick a field goal at the very end, and that was a home loss here to Saskatchewan off a fluke interception, that bounced off Tim and Tim White, and then the one last week was, how does that happen? How do you end up even them having the ball anywhere near midfield with that little time left when you scored with 28 seconds left to take the lead? So those are ones that you can't even say could have, would have. That's a should have win. So suppose they're 2-2. I'd say even 1-3. We'd be talking about what you just talked about, Nick. That's exactly what we'd be talking about, but it gets overshadowed because so Bo isn't getting the due because he's 0-4. So, and that's what happens. I mean, there's an old adage, and adages become adages, cliches become cliche because there's elements of truth to them. And that is, you are what your record says you are, especially in football, because you only play once a week. You don't get a chance to do it again. And it defines you, particularly with your fans. It also, the feeling in the organization too. Everybody hates losing, so for a whole week, you don't have another chance for a week. So yeah, I think Bo's what do you see from the outside with Bo? I'd be interested in hearing that.
I'm impressed how mobile he is. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Like even that throw to Tim White in the first drive there against Ottawa last week. Like I haven't seen that from Bo in a couple of years. And you think about a guy that was wearing a walking boot in training camp. It's really surprising in a good way for Bo.
That's exactly the way I see it. And that's, who else sees it that way? Bo and Milanovic. And Bo has been really honest about that. He said, look, I got to face it. I lost my job. I had a bad year last year and had some bad things happen, like two visits with serious injuries to the 6th game twice and had to sit on it the whole 6 games. And as you said, then you come out and suddenly you're in a walking cast. But in that between period, he listened to Scott Milanovic ask him to do the same things that he says Dave Dickinson asked him to do, but he did not do for Dave because he said, you got to be humbled a little bit. I maybe had a little bit I had this great success. Yeah, great success. Best winning percentage of all time. That's pretty good success. And so he said, I had to swallow, I had to eat some humble pie. So he ends up working Like I was here a lot in the wintertime because I also do the soccer team. The soccer team's so good. They play in CONCACAF in the Champions Cup.
Canadian
And
champions. Yeah, Chip. Yeah.
yeah, well, no, this is for CONCACAF for all of the
Yeah.
region.
This is for, yeah. Yeah.
Basically, the central uh, and North America, and they were playing against top teams from Mexico in the top competition for clubs in the region. So they're here in January, and there's Bo. There's Bo running out, and in February, and there's Bo at the stadium every day, and I thought it wasn't him because of what I was seeing. Like the legs and the speed, and he changed his body around. He changed his nutrition. He recognized he was getting a little older, and that you have to do more just to maintain, and maintaining wasn't going to be enough. He had to be better and stronger. And he Marcellus Bowman, the former player for the Argos, is a strength and conditioning coach, and he came highly recommended. And so the Ticats have hired him last year, and he worked every single day, because Bo was living here, and worked every single day, changed his body. Like you notice that, Nick, right from afar, that his body looks different, and it isn't just a fact. It's not. I mean, he's not going to win any relay races or anything like that, but those little moves that he used to make, just swing his hip a little bit, take 3 steps forward to get out of the pocket. Scott had him work very hard on his 3-step drop because he thought it was undisciplined, his footwork, and so he's working on that. That has changed his arms in great shape. His spirals are like just tremendous. And as you said, he can even roll out. There was one game he was the Ticats' leading rusher. More than he'd rushed in 4 of the 5 previous seasons added up.
I remember seeing that. Yeah.
So it was just like for all the games in that each season. No season did he run more than that, except I think 2018. It was the only one since 2016 or something that he'd run as many yards as he did in that game. So that gave him a lot of confidence. I think it gave his line a little confidence too. That if he can just hold that block a little bit, they'll, because linemen don't like blocking on passes every down. They like to be able to know there's going to be a running game there. And that's the other thing. Milanovic commits to the running game even when it's not working well. Worked well the first game, but it really hasn't gone well till maybe this after that. The next 2 games it didn't go well, but he's kept at it because that's the only way you make teams believe. It's the only way you make them believe in play action, and a lot of that was off play action, right? But not RPO so much as play action.
Yeah, and then in Ottawa Sunday, Steve, was the Tim White show as well. I think he had 118 yards. He almost had 100 yards in the return game too, right? We know what he's capable of, but just how big of a game breaker has he proven to been here?
Well, not much till this game, and it was a concern around town, and it was very much a concern for Tim White. Yeah, you could see like he had a lot of he had dropped 2 in the end zone, right? And he even had a drop in this game. But Tim used to have some drop problems a couple of years ago, and then they went away, and he still made a couple of great catches that went unnoticed again because you notice a couple of drops in the end zone.
The mistakes, yeah.
Yeah, that were really obviously, like looking the other way or miscommunication sometimes with Bo. So that was huge. And Bo deliberately it was clear, established what they would need to get him the ball more often. They need 2 players to get the ball more often, the most often on this team. That's James Butler and White. And they will do everything they can to make that happen. And because eventually the other team's either going to cheat towards them or they're going to say, well, those guys aren't doing anything, and leave them alone. And that's when they hope that it'll. I think that maybe it happened a little bit the other day that because Tim had, they were clearing a lot of room for Tim, and he had some room, and he ran some great patterns, made a couple of really good catches to getting the touchdown. Not only getting the touchdown early on the roll, but the catch was an extremely difficult catch. So not only did he break, he get the touchdown, he did it with a great catch 1 minute into the game. So suddenly things change. You could see it change for him right away. All athletes are so hard on themselves that when they run into a rough patch, they're usually really pretty good at getting over it. But if it gets, then it can become a burden. And I felt that it was becoming a little bit of, I know it was becoming a burden for Tim. and he's such a superior athlete. I mean, I don't think he gets the due that he should be getting across the league. I really don't. And I think he's, and I mean, it's probably because the Ticats have had losing records the last 2 years. But he's been enormously consistent. I mean, 1,200 yards both years, like within 20 or 30 yards of each other of each season. But the second season of that, he did it in quite a fewer reps.
Yeah.
So he becoming more effective. And then the season didn't start well, and things multiply. When the team isn't winning, everything multiplies. It doesn't add; it multiplies. It's exponential, and so one part of it that's not going well can become worse or feel worse at the very most. And you were mentioning you've been in previous years parts of teams like that. It's hard. You know what the feeling's like. I mean,
yep.
Sometimes it feels like you're never going to win another game. I don't think they feel that here. They keep saying that they're close, and they are. I mean, they really should be 2-2, but they aren't.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, you can argue they deserve a better fate, absolutely. But you definitely there's an element of you are what your record says you are, and that's just the sad reality.
And you can have those years.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're in one here or not. But you can have those years where you just lose a bunch of close games. I was part of covering from the Spectator in 1996. Was it 1997? They went 2-16. That's the year before Ron Lancaster arrived, and they found and Danny McManus and Darren Flutie and Carl Coulter and a few other guys. But it was really Lancaster coming. They were 2-16, but the defense was really good. They even brought the defense. The head coach They brought him back as defensive coordinator because the defense had been so good, and they lost a whole bunch of games. And there's a theory. I don't think this team is there yet, but there's a theory that you learn how to lose. But there's also the theory that sometimes if you're putting, and this is what the CFL goes through a lot, except, Winnipeg, you can see it. They've suddenly lost a whole bunch of players. And those were the guys that had learned how to win. It took them a long time to learn how to win. And first, you have to learn kind of how not to lose, especially if you're new. Well, the CFL goes through that now because of so much free agency. I mean, it's really that's why I think what Saskatchewan has done is a little surprising, because they went out and got some really good, some guys who'd had some time in this league, but they were new to each other, and it takes, every unit has to learn each other, particularly in the secondary.
That was Don Southern you're talking about, right? They
Don
fired
Southern,
him.
I was talking about, exactly.
And then, I remember. I vaguely remember that year as a kid.
I know that's a long time ago.
Yeah. Nick wasn't born yet, but
I was going to say, I'm sure many people who are watching and listening to us weren't either. And I don't like to live in the past. I really don't.
Right.
This is very much a today type of game, especially the way the game's changing. I mean, this game is changing in front of our very eyes.
Every week,
Every week. The manner in which it's done, the defense is becoming, you'll talk to every quarterback, and I'm surprised at how much good offense there's been, because their defenses should be ahead of the game early in the year. They normally are, right? Because it's reactive rather than proactive. It doesn't take as much sort of choreographing. It's, like offenses are a bit like synchronized swim teams, especially on the offensive line, because everybody's got to move at once, and it takes a while to get that. At the start of the season. So defense tends to be, because it's reactive and the reads, they tend to be a little bit ahead of the game most seasons. And some of them there are, and they're so complicated now that you wouldn't think the offense is, but it's surprising how many good years, particularly some of the veteran quarterbacks are having, like BA.
Well, Fajardo too, right? Yeah, seen it all across the league. Yeah.
And like who are the number two guys, the number 1 and 2 guys in the league in terms of yardage are this weekend, right?
Yeah.
I mean, going again, and of course, there's always the thing about VA. With this team, it was when he was here, and he was here just a very, very short time, but it was pretty intense.
2018, right? Yeah.
2018, and people will know this name, but may forget that this happened. Johnny Manziel.
Yeah.
Right. So, and everybody thinks that Johnny Manziel is the person that there were 4 quarterbacks here, right? They had at the time, remembering Jeremiah Mazzoli, and it was here, and everybody thinks that Vernon Adams got beaten out here in training camp by Johnny Manziel. He didn't. It was Johnny Manziel was going to be the guy, number 2 guy on this team at that time. he got beaten out by Dane Evans.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to the point, and I'm assuming you guys have done stories on this in the past. I'm sorry, I apologize because I didn't see them, but I assume you have. But Vernon became a receiver briefly.
Yep.
Yeah. He's talked about it on this podcast.
He gloats
before,
about
I'm
it.
assuming he would because it was a big moment in his career. And I loved him for it. The fact they said, I'm playing this game, right? I'm going to make this team as a receiver. And then, of course, June Jones starts talking about we're going to trade Vernon at. And of course, the GM's pulling his hair out. You don't go around telling people you're going to trade somebody because now they'll just wait.
They'll just wait wait him out.
And I'm so happy for him. I'm so happy for him that he left here and everything turned around for him and now everybody wants him and he's really getting his dues now. It's he's looking great. I'm happy for him. I mean, I enjoyed him in his time here. I'm assuming you guys do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's a blast. But I guess let's look ahead now to this weekend. Our old pal James Butler didn't play. He was obviously a tremendous asset to the team coming in free agency last year, but missed last week with a concussion. I believe he was limited today. Are we? Do you think we're going to see James on Sunday, or what's the vibe you're getting from that?
I'd be able to better answer that this time tomorrow. The key practice for him is tomorrow, because part of the concussion protocol is how do you react to exertion. And so they exerted him today. And he had the mushroom cap on. He was taking regular reps. So was Bell, the guy in case, because it still is a day one. You've got to get ready for. So Bell took a lot of the reps as well, but he's not the same kind of back that James is. And this right now, when things work well in this league, it's a power back league because you're going against smaller linebackers. And if you can get through that first, a guy like James is a guy that can, he had a great game, the first game. And then the next two, they couldn't establish them. Saskatchewan did something differently. They played Saskatchewan back to back. So the same guys back to back. So they basically defensed him the same. And, and then he got hurt. He's so important to this team. Again, they want the ball in James Butler's hand 20 times a game. That's the number. And that's a lot. When you also want to get the ball to Tim White, you probably want to at least give him 10 targets a game. That's 30 targets. How many offensive plays are there? Like that's 30 with James and him together. That makes, what is that, half? That's a little more than half of your non-punting plays from scrimmage. If the average number of plays is what, 55, 60?
About that,
yeah.
Yeah, something like that. And he's the kind of guy, because he played in the West Coast, I didn't see him as often until I started to watch him, and I went, because he's that combination of acceleration, but with that power, and he's a pretty good block reader as well. Bo was pretty impressed with his sort of intuition. And he's had to learn a couple of things about it, but he's good at that too. So, he's the kind of guy they've got to have, and they don't grow on trees. Those guys. There's 2 or 3 guys around the league that are there. Sandback's been that way much of his career, and it's nice to see him have a rebound too. I'm very glad about that.
Yeah, looking, and you're right about James. We enjoyed him immensely here, the player and the person. And there's a couple other players we're familiar with here as we get a quick discussion with you about the defense. So the line includes the likes of David Menard, Nick Usher, who was here for a cup of coffee. We talked about these games coming down to the fourth quarter, Steve, those 4 or 5 plays before the end of the fourth quarter. If they go your way, you're going to have success. But defensively, what has worked? What do you think the Cats need to improve on?
Well, they need to turn rushes into pressures and pressures into sacks. They had a couple of games where that was happening, but they're not getting people out of their comforts. Now, they played Trevor, right, who gets rid of the ball in one hell of a hurry. But VA is the kind of guy that we're going to give him trouble too, because he extends plays with his legs, and there's a lot of quarterbacks in the league doing that. So you mentioned Usher. He's been a revelation to me.
Yep.
He's been the guy. I think um, who was it? Brandon Barlow. I think had 3 sacks in one game, and 2 of them were set up by Usher. And Casey Sales had one the previous game, and it was set up by Usher. And on a couple of them, he just drove the quarterback back into the guy who made the tackle. So 3 of their first 4 sacks were essentially created by him. That you'd have to be a football type to recognize that happened, right? You'd know it, I'd know it, So somebody that at least has a lot of, has watched a lot of games. So I've been really impressed with him. The linebacker, their problem has been confusion in the secondary, and part of that is related to not enough pressure at big moments from the line. The line played much better last game, the defensive line, until the fourth quarter, and they're not making the big stops. You ask what they have to do. They aren't making enough big stops on the last 2 or 3 drives. And I don't know that it's fatigue, because the offense has had the ball a fair amount of time. Against Ottawa, the offense had the ball 5 more minutes than Ottawa did, yet it would look like the Ticats were the ones at the very end at the second last drive. You just can't let that happen. You can't make it that easy for the quarterback. And part of it is, I think, a little bit of stuff in the back. And they have experienced people in the backfield, but they're not playing necessarily in the same. Like on the game 3 was the first time they had all of their starters together in the secondary, the projected starters together for the second game in a row. But after game 3, they didn't like what they saw, and they changed so that if the back 6, and you count the Sam linebacker, for those of you that are listening that's the wide side linebacker on the very widest part of the field. They're more of a defensive back than they are a true linebacker. So they count that when you count the back 6. And only 2 of the back 6 were in the same spot as they had been before, and they only made 1 addition and one subtraction, but they moved 3 of the other ones around because they didn't like the feel of it. They took their Sam linebacker, and it was a classic American strong safety, and moved him into the strong side of the field, and only Jamal Peter and the safety Stavros Katsatonis, who you'd recognize as a
UBC boy.
Yeah, boy, he's on his way to becoming, they think, here the next Rob Hitchcock. I mean, he's really in his first year as a starter, right? He was a starter from the day last season ended. They knew he was going to be starting. They built their ratio when they're doing their ratio calculations. They built it partly around he's one of them. He's one of the Canadians on defense, and he hits a ton. I thought but too many of them are playing too far off the ball. There's been a little bit of lack of confidence there. And if you're going to they wanted to go ball hawk because Peters is a ball hawk. There's several guys on the team are ball hawks. If you're going to be ball hawks, you can't play 8 yards off guys, especially in critical situations. But you also have to have the rush, because the knee bone's always connected to the thigh bone. And, their whole linebacking core is new. I mean, you don't replace somebody like Simone Lawrence overnight in any way. The spirit in the dressing room, and the fact that he was one of those freelance types of players. So he had such a feel for the Canadian game. And I know he's disliked everywhere outside of Hamilton. And dislike might not be a strong enough word, but he really, it's hard to replace that, and it takes some time. So the middle linebacker's looking like he's coming on. He's had 16 tackles in the last 2 games, but here's a stat would scare most football people. That is Kyle Wilson. So he had 10 tackles in the game in Regina last week or a week and a half ago, and then 6 more in Ottawa. So 16 of his tackles have come in the last 2 games. But prior to the next 3 or 4, I think 4 out of the next 5 guys in tackles are defensive backs, and you don't want that.
Don't want it. Yeah. They mentioned that on TV.
Number.
Yeah.
That's a very bad number, and at one point it was 1, 2, 3 until he made the 10 tackles in game 2. It was 1, 2, 3 was defensive backs. So that tells you, obviously, they're completing passes underneath them. And that's, part of that is cohesion and getting to learn things. It takes a while. I remember when BC had a great backfield years ago, but the first year, the growing pains were terrible. But the next year they became one of the best. And Saskatchewan had the same thing. We had the same thing here in Hamilton 3 or 4 years ago. When you go, yeah, but they stuck with it. They all learned each other. They got that choreography down. There's so much communication and the reads are incredible back there. And the part of it is, I think most defensive backs have to be like relief pitchers. If you get burned, you can't let it affect your next play. And I think there was a little bit of that going on the first 2 or 3 games. And so they made changes, and I think they think they have what they have now, what they want now, but that'll take time to build because these guys have just played one game together. So, that's something I know Vernon will be looking at. He'll be looking at, what the other teams do there. If you can get rid of the ball or extend your plays so they have to cover too long, and that's what he does so well.
Steve, this has been fascinating. We circled Hamilton on the calendar for the chance to get you on, and I enjoy following and reading and listening to all the work you do. And we look forward to crossing paths here at Tim Hortons Field, the Donut Box on Sunday.
The Donut Box, and it's funny, guys. I said at the start of this, I'm not going to dominate the conversation, but I lied.
That's okay. No,
We're looking for the full breakdown. Yeah,
great.
We got some Kyle Wilson talk I was going to get to him, so we covered it all, I think.
This has been brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll obviously, hopefully, are you both coming out?
Absolutely.
We'll be there, yeah.
Oh, that's great. Okay, that's wonderful. So I'll see you on Sunday at the latest, I hope.
Excellent. Thanks for the time, sir.
Awesome.
Guys,
thanks, Steve.
Okay, Nick, Matt, see you then.
An excellent deep dive on all things Tiger Cats with Steve Milton. Very, very fascinating, very informative conversation.
100%. Yeah, it was got the little scouting report on Bo Levi Mitchell. You kind of hit the reverse Uno card for us. And I mean, it's something I think we've been seeing with Bo, right? Like he is really playing his best football, I think, since you could say maybe around 2019, 2018, when he was still kind of in his heyday with Calgary. And again, the top 2 passers in the CFL are going head-to-head on Sunday.
Second straight week, of course. McLeod Bethel Thompson was in second spot before Bo Levi overtook him. And we talked about James Butler trying to work his way back this week, a limited practice participant on Wednesday. But they've had some more bad injury luck too overall.
Yeah, Dwayne Hendricks is another guy, maybe not a household name, but it's another guy they brought in from Toronto that's missed a couple games. I'm looking at their injury report right now. He was limited. Who else is on there? You got James Tuck, one of the most versatile fullbacks in the league, OG fullback. He did not practice either. And then what I'm keeping my eye on here is kind of a fascinating story, at least. Lawrence Woods, who was with Hamilton last year, signed to here in the offseason, never ultimately made the training camp. So he ventures his way back to Hamilton as their returner. And he got injured last week, actually, when Hamilton was at Ottawa. So Tim White handled the return duties in favor of Lawrence Woods after he went down. So Tim White, like you said, obviously broke out for 118 yards last week. But I mean, he was off to it was just a weird funk watching him not be like Tim White those first 3 games, right? So led the league in receiving last year. I will mention Keon Hatcher by far led the league in yards. We can get into that a little later about the injuries for the Lions too. But yeah, like they still got some firepower too. Shamar Bridges is another name I think needs mentioning. He's leading the CFL in receptions. He's a rookie receiver out of Hamilton, so number 17's and a number to keep their eye on. I'm sure RP and the DBs are scheming up for number 17 this week. So, like we said, they're right there. So it's not going to be an easy game. Work's cut out again for us. And I think it was proven against Edmonton, right, with the last second win.
And Rick Campbell's had the right message week in and week out about how have to keep this Lions team focused, and as long as they keep preaching that message, you expect them to handle business, to take care of business. So you mentioned Hatcher, Keon, TJ Lee, Nathan Cherry, Francis Bemmy Jr., who are on the 6-game injured list still, now eligible to practice 2 weeks ahead of their eligible return. So all 4 of those guys full go at practice. Going to take it slow with TJ and Keon for sure. We'll see what the next couple of weeks will hold here, but both of those players, all those guys eligible to return July the 21st in Calgary. So
makes you giddy.
It does.
Thinking about it.
It does.
You can see the energy out there today.
And Coach Rick talked about how they improved the overall team energy. So hopefully that's a trickle-down effect for those who will be healthy and playing in Hamilton. It's all part of Week 5 in the Canadian Football League season. In fact, all 4 games this week, East-West matchups.
Yeah.
So we'll go around it. It all kicks off Thursday, the 4th of July. Toronto in Saskatchewan. Riders at 3-0 here, coming off their bye. The Argos, just the latest team to be steamrolled, we can say, by the Montreal Alouettes, the defending Grey Cup champion Alouettes. We'll talk about them in a couple of minutes, but bounce-back opportunity for Toronto. And, of course, the big news from a Saskatchewan perspective is Shea Patterson, the expected starting quarterback, with Trevor Harris heading to the 6-game injured list.
Yeah, and I think looking ahead, as we're allowed to do, at least as the media folks, not the players or the coaches. Obviously, they're focused on Hamilton, but I'm really looking ahead because of next week, the Watermelon Smash, like we mentioned.
Yes.
It looks like it'll be no Trevor Harris for the Rough Riders unless he comes off the 6th game after 1 week, but that is extremely unlikely. So it looks like it will be Shea Patterson or whoever else it could be. I think they just signed a quarterback from Winnipeg's practice.
Barrier.
From their cuts
Eric
earlier
Barrier,
in the season, right? So I'm really going to keep a close eye to this one to see how Shea Patterson does with this Riders offense. Obviously, when Patterson came in last week against, or the week before against Hamilton, they already had a big lead already, so didn't have to do much, obviously, but it's an offense with AJ Ouellette. I'm sure he's going to be leaned on a lot more with Trevor Harris.
AJ going up against his old team.
Yeah, that too, right? And Trevor Harris not playing in this game. So the Riders are 3-0. I believe they're the underdog in this game because of the Trevor Harris situation.
Right.
And that's no I mean, the Argos are no slouch either, although they did get beat pretty bad last week, but should be a good game, should be a close one, and I'm again keeping a close eye on this one to see how the Riders offense looks with no Trevor Harris back there.
Friday night football is in Winnipeg. The 0-4 Blue Bombers and Zach Collaros, as of this recording, has not participated in Bombers practice. In fact, I think he's officially listed as questionable, going with the old thorax injury on the injury report. So Collaros, of course, exiting just before halftime in Winnipeg's loss at Calgary. Ottawa picking up an impressive win, like we've talked about, against the Hamilton Tiger Cats on Sunday. Winnipeg going to be playing this one like it's a must-win football game, but that quarterback question is going to linger until, probably about a half hour or so before kickoff.
Yeah, going to sound like a broken drum here, but keeping a close eye on the quarterback situation and for the home team in this game too, right? Obviously with Zach, it's injury status up in the air right now. Chris Trevler would be probably the starter if Zach can't go. And Ottawa coming off a big win, right? I brought this up on Tap about how when we went to Winnipeg, that second Hollins touchdown, it was the same play that we ran against Toronto week 1, and I noticed that right while rewatching it on TSN afterwards. And I'm watching the Ottawa Hamilton game last week, and there's 6 seconds to go, and Ottawa's kind of on the brink of field goal range. It would have been I think a 56-yarder at that point for Lewis Ward, which is pretty long. And what do? They run that short little curl route to the boundary and get a couple more yards. 1 second left for Lewis Ward to trot out there and beat the Hamilton Tiger Cats. What did I think of when that happened last year? Remember Keon Hatcher? 4 seconds to go. Same kind of thing. So Hamilton got again on that last play, but this time by Ottawa.
Yeah.
And one other note about field goal kickers. I know they won a perfect, I think it was 27 for 27 last week, I think was the number. 3 walk-offs, obviously. But Sergio Castillo, 60-yarder. Crazy, right?
Bombers team record, right?
Crazy, yeah. Awesome kick for Sergio. And, I mean, the kickers in this league, talk about Sean White, but there's also Rene Paredes, Lewis Ward with the walk-off. So 3 of the greatest ever to all walk it off in the same weekend, made for a pretty special week 4.
And good to see Sergio bounce back, of course, struggling a bit in the week 1 loss to Montreal. Good old Serge is another Mr. Reliable. Like we've said, Saturday night, 4-0 Montreal hosting 2-1 Calgary. The Stampeders, like we talked about, made it interesting against Winnipeg. Just allowed the 1 offensive touchdown that ultimately forced overtime. But a tough spot here for Calgary going into Montreal. And not just because the Alouettes are playing so elite right now. Calgary has traditionally struggled in Montreal. Even those years where Calgary was kind of the class of the West, the class of the league, they would always seem to stub their toe at Molson Stadium. I'm not sure how many exact losses they had in a row there at one point, but I'm looking forward to watching this one. We'll be on the ground in Hamilton Saturday night. We'll have to find a spot to pull up and watch it perhaps. So The Alouettes looking to go to 5-0, something they have not done, well, I'm guessing probably since the days of Anthony Calvillo and Ben Cahoon. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I mean, good luck to the Stampeders, right? The Alouettes in their home opener look pretty unstoppable right from the get-go, and they've been on some kind of tear right now. I know everyone's talking about the Alouettes. They're on a 12-game win streak, actually, dating back to last season, and everyone's saying how they're the undisputed champs. They've beaten everybody in this stretch. You know, they obviously beat Winnipeg in the Grey Cup, Toronto in the East Final, and last week, but I mean, again, something the players and maybe coaches won't say, but there's one kind of team missing that they haven't overcame last year, and that's the BC Lions.
That's right. Yeah.
Really looking forward. We don't play them until September, unfortunately, but
September 6th.
I want another crack at them. We went 2-0 against them last year. I'm sure there's some guys in our locker room that want another crack at them. Will Stanback comes to mind. Vernon Adams Jr. always has that kind of revenge factor against Montreal, right? So, long way to go until that point, but I'm looking forward to playing these Alouettes and seeing how we stack up against them.
Yeah, and Cody Fajardo, believe he's tied for the CFL lead in touchdown passes with Bo Levi Mitchell, and a great story for him. A lot of people talking about how he wasn't that guy, and how Saskatchewan, the departure there was kind of interesting, but one of the solid guys in this league as well. Could not be happening to a better bunch of guys when talking about the opposition, of course. So 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern, of course, on Saturday. And then, of course, the final event. We were the first game last week and the last one this week. Gotta love that scheduling, although this long week is quite refreshing. Lions, Tiger Cats, 4 o'clock, Tim Hortons Field. A 980 CKNW pregame show is 3 o'clock. Lions Radio Punjabi on AM 600 with Harp and Tack. Their pregame show at 3:30 Pacific. Looking forward to this one. Always love Tim Hortons Field. Always love going to see the Hall of Fame bus. We'll probably pay a visit up there like we did the last previous years. Love it. And before we're out of here, go for it or punt. As I scroll down to that section, I know this makes for good audio. All right, what are we going for, Nick?
I was gonna. I have listed down the Mackey hurdle, but we already kind of talked about that off the top, right? David Mackey, obviously, we put up the video, like I said, with his 4 hurdles. So instead of the Mackey hurdle, I might just go for David Mackey this edition, because
nice.
I mean the hurdle it's always a fun moment. Obviously gets the game, I guess, go-ahead touchdown, as we referred to it in the fourth quarter.
Put them ahead 21-18.
Wasn't the game-winning touchdown, unfortunately. That's where Sean White comes in to get the game-winning points. But David Mackey had a great celebration too. Big week for him with the great celebration in the end zone. I think he was emulating a danger can, I believe it was, with the football. So
yes.
That's an awesome fullback celebration. And one other note about David Mackey this season that I want to bring up is, I mean, tied for the team lead with 5 special teams tackles. We talked about it on tap earlier this season, where he gets that special teams tackle right off the bat in Toronto, kind of that monkey off your back that the season's officially started. So David Mackey's off to an awesome season. Can't speak enough to his leadership too in this room. The CFL PA rep for the team, someone that is definitely a leader in this room.
Solid, yeah.
So I'm going for David Mackey this week.
Awesome. I'm going for Canuck Roadies. Remember, we talked about it. Had an awesome time in Vegas in March. Saw a big Canuck win. Had some fun in Vegas. I don't know. A couple trips to Seattle this year. I might just do one of those. Might just do it.
Just throw an invite over.
Okay.
I've never been to a game in Seattle yet. I know you have, but
I have not actually. Had the tickets there 2 years ago, but we just due to various reasons we ended up.
I remember you had a planned trip to Seattle, so
yeah, and it's a good thing we did, because I think it was Rick Tockett's second or third game, and it was a 6-1 Kraken blowout. So I think we had an inkling that it wasn't going to go too well. So
everything happens for a reason.
January 2nd and March 1st, I believe. The March 1st one's a Saturday, so
I'll probably be back in the snowy Winnipeg on January 2nd. But
okay, there you go. So might just consider that. I'll continue with the punting here.
I was gonna say Canuck home games though. That's a thumbs down for the people watching, if you get what I'm saying. For that one certain Canuck home games going on, which is unfortunate.
5 o'clock on Grey Cup Sunday,
and it's Nashville too, of all teams. I can't see my Predators this year.
Well, Nashville's coming a second time, right?
January 3rd. So
you're probably the night after that Seattle game.
Yep.
Oh,
back to back.
There
So
you
you might
go.
not even see Demko if you go.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Who do they sign as the backup? I know we're getting off the rails here. Did they have a Seelovs?
Well, Shelovs is still a restricted free. They signed a Vegas goaltender. The name Yuri something. Name escapes me right now. But, yeah.
Anyways.
All right, enough hockey talk. I'm punting. People, just because the HOV lane's available doesn't mean you have to drive in it, especially if you're going to go below the speed limit. I hate that. Encountered that the other day, and I'm like, come on.
I think you can like olive branch that to like the left lane on the highway too.
The fast lane.
In Manitoba, the HOV is not a thing. So I actually didn't know what I didn't know what it was. I read the signs and figured out easily what it was. But at first, that was one of the things that kind of confused me at the top. And U-turns. What's up with U-turns here? You can't do them, I'm told.
You can do them.
Well, apparently they're illegal. In Manitoba, they're not.
There's some intersections where there's the sign saying you can't do them, but
I'm told
that's
that
not every. No, they're not fully illegal.
Okay.
Well, they better not be, because I would have had about 100 violations by now. But
I think you're not allowed to in UBC. I mean UBC in BC. So
I don't think that's accurate.
okay.
But
well, I'm not doing them just in case. I haven't been.
You got a driving one here too, right?
Yeah, I got another one I'm pretty passionate about. So you ever take the same route? I'm sure you take the same route to work all the time, right?
Every time.
You probably don't have much traffic lights at your route, right? You kind of just hit the highway.
Go through New West. So yeah, I hit some lights. Yep.
So there's a stretch in Manitoba that I always think about. No one listening will understand, so I won't even mention it. But there's always some stretches where the lights are all synchronized, and if you hit a green, you're going to hit like 10 greens in a row, pending traffic, of course. But there's this new light on King George. It's controlled by I think
pedestrian.
Pedestrian light, right? So it's one of those crosswalk ones. I think they made it for the new SkyTrain and bus stations, King George. And I know this because I take this way to work every day. If you hit this light, this crosswalk pedestrian light, it literally, when it turns green, the one that's like maybe 100 feet down from it on 100th Avenue, I think it is, it literally goes red the second this one goes green.
Yeah.
So I know when I hit this one, I'm in for like a 2.5 minute wait, and it bothers me so much.
Well,
so I'm punting those unsynchronized traffic lights.
Yeah, and this is a problem, especially in the area you're talking about, King George here, Central City, whatever. There's new high-rises going up everywhere. 2-3 years from now, when there's people living, then the traffic's just going to keep getting worse. And a lot of these intersections, like you said, it's the pedestrians and the cyclists that control the traffic because they can just hit the light. That's what I think about.
Got to build some overpasses.
2-3 years from now, it's going to be hell.
I mean, it's a good thing though. I love my area, and I'm part of that, so I love it. But yeah, pros and cons, right? And that was something that happened. It happened to me the other day, and I thought, I'm punting this. I got to talk about this week. I got to save it for Wednesday. So yeah, it frustrated me.
All right, we hit our driving traffic takes
first world problems.
episode.
Yeah, as I say.
Exactly. First world, we're still upright. Everyone's good. Everyone's healthy.
Yeah, not actually upset, but we're gunning I'm still punting it. I'm not going for it.
We're gunning for a fourth straight win. Life could certainly be worse, even if there's a hockey game going to be starting about halftime of Grey Cup Sunday. But you know what? If this Lions team, if we're fortunate to be there, we're not going to be thinking about hockey.
Yeah,
it's going to be amazing.
Just bring your hats for Steven Stamkos.
Marcia right?
Fired up, yeah. Stamkos get the hat trick, though.
Yeah. The Tampa Bay Lightning punting Steven Stamkos on this topic. Well, right? Interesting.
So it goes.
All right. Lions Ticats Sunday. We'll be back next week to recap it all. Look ahead more to the Watermelon Smash. Subscribe to our YouTube, all of our practice content. If you haven't watched Arrow Up yet, please do. That's there. All of our podcasts. If you missed last week's episode, it was a good one. Who'd we have? I forgot already. It was so great.
Dave Campbell.
Dave Campbell, yes.
Dave Campbell. Chris Slugger on Tap.
Dave.
That's on YouTube already.
Yeah, Slugger was, I was thinking, I had On Tap on my mind for some reason.
Moj saying Schluger in a loud German accent would crack me up.
That's Moj being Moj. Moral of the story, subscribe, like, leave us a review, and we'll be back next week on First and Now, the official Lions podcast.